The unquestioned face of the franchise and Dalton Schultz. What should we, what the heck was going on with Dalton Schultz last year? Let's discuss.
Yeah. It's the Locker Room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey, Locker Room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source. We the pulse of the city too. Landlocked. Got the game in the headlock. Localize every time. Can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, we top two and we not too. Plugged in daily digital on YouTube.
All right, special Saturday stream, little quick stream today. How does this happen? Was supposed to do it yesterday on Friday. What happened was I went to the Astros game, and the game was very slow. And then once the game ended up being slow, I think it was like an hour through the first inning, they ended up doing fireworks. So we ended up staying as a fam at the ballpark at the Astros game. Then I was going to do it today at 11. Well, my daughter, and most of you who have kids know this, there's one rule to live by. When they sleep, you let them sleep. And her room is actually right across the hall from the studio, so I didn't want to wake her up. She actually slept in today till about 12:05. So when the daughter sleeps, you let her sleep. And this is where we're at right now with the Saturday stream. And I want to start by talking about DeMeco Ryans and what to expect from DeMeco Ryans and what we expect from DeMeco Ryans. The standard has been set with DeMeco Ryans. 2 years in, it was the perfect hire at the time, and I don't think there can be too many complaints. Now, you can select a few things here and there. I know yesterday one of the viewers, Dom in Jersey, he said that he hadn't been pleased with some of DeMeco's in-game decisions. I can't point to any specific in-game decision and say DeMeco screwed this up. Now, depending on how you saw him and Bobby Slowick's dynamic and whether he's the one telling Bobby Slowick how to handle things in Green Bay, then maybe you could point that out, because it was pathetic to run the ball twice and then throw the ball short of the chains and get an incomplete pass in Green Bay, and it led to Green Bay taking over the game. But I look at that as much on the offensive coordinator as I do the head coach. You could definitely kind of wonder about how he handles the other side of the rock when it comes to the offense. The offense, it's not proportional when it comes to investment. It's not proportional when it comes to performance. It's not proportional when it comes to performance based on expectations and adjustments and all that type of stuff. So you could nitpick that about DeMeco Ryans. If people were hesitant to hire a defensive minded coach, which was the biggest pushback on DeMeco Ryans, he has been willing to make changes. See firing Bobby Slowick, but he also was the person who brought in Bobby Slowick, and his football team clearly resembles a team that is way better on the defensive side of the ball than the offensive side of the ball. So if you wanted to nitpick it, you could figure that out. But for me, DeMeco Ryans is the unquestioned face of the franchise. And I think this is going to be the case throughout the entire tenure of CJ Stroud. I know a lot of times whenever a team gets good, the quarterback becomes the face of the franchise. To me, this is DeMeco Ryans' franchise. And I think that DeMeco Ryans, his staying power is longer than anyone else's. I see no scenario where DeMeco Ryans exits before Caserio. There's no scenario there. If this offensive line continues to struggle, if the OC hire ends up being kind of a dud, then it's going to be Caserio's job, not DeMeco's, or they're going to handle it together. We don't know what CJ Stroud's going to end up being. Even some really good quarterbacks, you find yourself in stale situations. See Matthew Stafford in Detroit. I know that the Texans don't function like Detroit. See a lot. Josh Allen in Buffalo right now is probably a bad example. Lamar Jackson. But if you can't get over the hump eventually you have to start life with a new quarterback. I think depending on how long DeMeco Ryans wants to coach, he could potentially outlast CJ Stroud. In a perfect world, they're kind of shoulder to shoulder, but this is DeMeco Ryans, and I think he's going to be given every opportunity possible to get this done. So I think DeMeco Ryans is the unquestioned face of the franchise. I think it's the right hire. I think so far so good, but eventually, and we saw this with BOB, you kind of find yourself where division titles are kind of eye rolls. And around here, we kind of rolled our eyes when Bill O'Brien started yelling and say, AFC's division champs, we won the division, all that. That is something that if DeMeco Ryans, let's say 4 years from now, the Texans still haven't been in the AFC championship game and they're winning division titles, do you start getting, does there start to be a little bit of hesitancy or apathy with the Texans because it's the same old, same old? I would probably think so. If you are going to hold DeMeco accountable to the standards that he has set and the standards that we held Bill O'Brien to. And I was a big Bill O'Brien critic. I think Bill O'Brien, my biggest critiques were the quarterbacks in the division sucked. You can go through the list. The rest of the coaches in the division sucked. You can go through that list. Although I think the coaches now in the AFC South are probably a little bit better. Quarterbacks still suck. And it was a bad division, and you were able to win. And defense was your strength, not offense. And it's different when you talk about it with O'Brien because offense, he was supposed to be the offensive guy. They were never top half of the league in DVOA. DeMeco's a defensive guy. This is a top 5 defense. And we think it's only going to get better. So he handles that, but he's still got to figure out who the right coordinator to raise the unproportional play from the offense to the defense, who that's going to be. Andy Reid has found that guy with Spags. Andy Reid probably doesn't even have to go in defensive meetings if he doesn't want to. I'm sure he probably still does, but he doesn't have to. They found their coordinator. And they're lucky because the guy's already sucked as a head coach. So that's another luxury he has. Like no one's hiring Spags to be a head coach. Is DeMeco going to be able to figure this out? If the Kaylee thing doesn't fit, I do think he gets a third opportunity. I don't think he gets on some sort of hot seat. But he's got to figure that out for sure. On the Saturday Super Chat, the man, the myth, the legend, the man who never sleeps.
You ain't never hate.
Swarm.
HD AV Traveler. He loves riding them motorcycles. He is a much braver man than I. Shout out to him. But DeMeco, face of the franchise. Is he already the GOAT head coach? That's an interesting question from Rich Boy. I would say it's Kubiak, but it's not like that was a high bar. You know, I love Gary. Gary's a friend of the show. We've had him on the stream a couple of times. Might get him in season. He's just not very good with technology, though. He's got to get his wifey to help him out. But I would say that it's not that high of a bar for Gary Kubiak. Now, a lot of it wasn't his fault. He didn't control the Schaub injury, and there was some bad luck there, and you know, he was kind of having to figure some stuff out. But it's not really that high of a bar. Now, some would say O'Brien's better than Kubiak if you look at the entire record. I don't think Bill O'Brien's a better coach than Kubiak. I think Kubiak, if they had been more patient with Kubiak, and maybe it was just time to change, I think Kubiak could have got it done. I think he could have done wonders with Deshaun, but I would say that Kubiak's a better coach. Now, Kubiak is 61-64. BOB is 52-48. So BOB has a better win percentage. Kubiak has more wins. DeMeco's already got 20. So I will say, like, if you look at the win total that DeMeco's chasing, if we're just going to go by wins, he needs 41 more dubs, which would be, I don't know, that's 5 years to get that. We'll say, I mean, he's gotten 10 the first two. So that would be 5 years to get that. So it's inevitable that DeMeco is going to be the all-time best coach in Texans history. It's also not that big of a deal, because there's been a lot of mediocrity around here. So there we go on the DeMeco Ryans thing. Someone else I want to talk about, the man of 2 seasons, Dalton Schultz, one of the most polarizing Texans currently on the roster. I would say, if I had to list the most unpopular Texans at the moment, and this is just based on my interaction, this is based on you people, and I do mean you people in the chat, and this is based on what you see online, Twitter, all that type of stuff. Dangerous place to try to gauge things, but my timeline is set up to where the opinions I see are the ones that I respect. I don't see too much garbage. But I would say that the most unpopular Texans at the moment, I think Dalton Schultz is at the very top of the list. I think he's at the very top of the list. And I get it, because he was so bad last year. He was so bad last year. And we'll get more into that in a second. But I would say Dalton Schultz is up there. I would say unfairly maybe Kaimi Fairbairn's up there, because of just how bad he was and the way that he kind of killed the momentum in the playoffs, and you had the miss against the Titans. Despite being the GOAT at his position, I would say Fairbairn's up there, but I think that's more of an indictment and representation of how unfair people are to kickers. The lack of respect for one of the more difficult positions. I compare kicking to kind of golf. Some shots would be good from further distances. Some you have to measure wind, timing, all that type of stuff. You have to be mentally tough. But I would say Fairbairn, Jared Wayne is on the list. That a lot of people not wanting to forgive him for what went down with Tank Dell, which is kind of a tough thing for him. But those would be the 3. And then you can pick an offensive lineman if you want, but Tunsil, Shaq, Kenyon Green gone, that takes off half the list. In different levels. Obviously, Tunsil's a better player than the other 2, but false starts are going to piss people off, and just kind of the overall mannerisms and ho-hum kind of attitude. But yeah, I would say those are the top 3 right there. Titus, you could say Titus Howard. Yeah, I mean, he's just kind of there now. You're not too dependent on him. It almost feels like they've moved on from him, but haven't moved on from him, if that makes sense. When you make a bad investment, you just got to try to make it work in some way, shape, or form. So Titus Howard could be on the list as well. But we're talking about Dalton Schultz. And you look at Dalton Schultz's production last year, and if you just look at stats and you don't really have the full context, then you could probably make a case that the fall off wasn't as bad as the reaction. I would strongly dispute that. And I think stats can be useful, but when you watch a team play and you watch every single snap in depth, sometimes multiple times, the context does matter. And Dalton Schultz was just flat out awful last year. And I think that's probably something that he would say. I think I could see Dalton Schultz just saying, I sucked last year. But the question is why? What exactly happened to Dalton Schultz in 2024? And I was watching NFL Live on ESPN, and I heard the way that they were talking about Travis Kelce. And Travis Kelce's 35. Dalton Schultz just turned 29, I believe, yesterday. And they're just talking about, well, he's just not as explosive. He's not making as many guys miss. He's not as good of a blocker. It seems like he's kind of fallen off. Maybe he was a little bit banged up last year. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, well, damn, that kind of sounds like what we're saying about Dalton Schultz. Now, obviously, Travis Kelce is one of the best of all time. And he's a top 4, top 5 tight end of all time. And it's obviously different. And he's also 6 years older. But what makes someone the best of all time, there's a couple of things. First of all, it's season production over maybe even a short period of time. And then a lot of times it's longevity. And more times than not, guys fall off closer to 30 than they do 35. So maybe Dalton Schultz is just washed. That's scenario one. Maybe he's just washed. And we've already seen the best of Dalton Schultz. That is one scenario. It happens. A lot of wear and tear. He's already in the high 0.0001% of guys that has played the game as long as he has. And sometimes you just fall off at 28, 29. Just happens. Maybe his best days are behind him. Dalton Schultz is no longer in his prime. Maybe that happened. The other thing is maybe he was hurt. Maybe Dalton Schultz was injured last year. And you kind of try to backtrack and try to look at hints and stuff. We did see him miss some practice time, but we didn't see him miss any games. And we also noticed, and I thought this was interesting, and it kind of blended in with some of the unnecessary praise that they got, because DeMeco was like praising Kenyon Green when we all saw that Kenyon Green was playing bad, and he praised Shaq Mason. But there was also a lot of praise for Dalton Schultz despite the lack of production. And it came from CJ. It came from Slowick. Slowick. I know we don't like to hear that name, but it came from Slowick.
Damn it, Bobby.
It came from DeMeco. And it makes me wonder if maybe behind the scenes, Dalton Schultz was playing in a lot more pain than we thought he was playing with. And that's another thing about Dalton Schultz and the frustration is his body language sucks. Like he'll do a little celebration after, but for the most part, like when he catches the ball, it's not going to be something explosive. You're not going to have like Jeremy Shockey type of explosion. He doesn't even really have juice that Stover does when he catches the ball. But that's whether Dalton Schultz is playing good or bad. That doesn't change. There's some guys where you see them and they come across as sluggish only when they're playing bad. Dalton Schultz's body language is never going to be elite. So those are a couple of scenarios. It's perhaps he's washed, perhaps he was hurt, perhaps both. The other thing I think we have to take into account is Bobby Slowick didn't really use him right. And Bobby Slowick was asking Dalton Schultz to do a lot of things that Dalton Schultz should not have done and should have not have been asked to do. And if it's stuff that he was doing at a higher level the year before, there should have been some sort of adjustment, and you should have realized, hey, Dalton Schultz being out here on an island against the DN is probably a bad idea. Dalton Schultz being the lead blocker, like on a play, is probably not a good idea. Probably should maximize what Dalton Schultz is and how you can use him. And the other thing that happened is he didn't make very many big plays. That's the other thing. Like you look at what he did in 2023 with the stats. That doesn't even tell the whole story. And this goes back to actually watching players and watching a team 24/7. It's not something like a brag or anything, but that's what we do around here. But you look at just like the big plays that Dalton Schultz made in 2023. I mean, you can make a case that it was a season-saving catch against the Titans when Case Keenum was starting. He went up and mossed the guy before the Texans ended up taking the lead and winning the game. If he doesn't make that catch, which, by the way, even that had a little level of awkwardness to it, going back to the body language thing. But if he doesn't make that catch, they might not make the playoffs. They lose that game. They might not make the playoffs. So he had that play. The touchdown against the Browns, which he damn near dropped. But the one that Slowick dialed up, the touchdown against the Browns. Couple third down plays that Dalton Schultz made. Like, he made some big plays in 2024, and in 2025, that wasn't the case. And what makes it even more surprising is you look at what he did in 2023. And I also think the contract was a little bit too much. And that kind of adds to the frustration because they didn't want to franchise tag him, so they franchise tagged him twice. That's essentially what the Texans did. Now, he got a 3-year contract. It's really a 2-year contract. This is going to be the last year that Schultz plays on this deal. But the value of the tight end franchise tag would have been like $11 million. And I don't even think anyone thought that Dalton Schultz was someone that warranted getting $11 million. Well, the Texans gave him $11 million guaranteed for 2 years. So they essentially franchise tagged him twice. Meanwhile, you have guys like Zach Ertz, you have Jonnu Smith, you have a lot of bargain tight ends that are going out there and playing at a much higher level than Schultz. Schultz was not a top 20 most productive tight end last year. And if you're looking at fantasy rankings and all that type of stuff, and we all are this type of the year, I think everyone has a fantasy team. He's not in the top 20 of any rankings, which is kind of wild because we know that Nick Caley likes tight ends. And we know that the Texans have a bad offensive line. So a good counter for a bad offensive line could be a tight end. And we did see him make plays a couple of years ago. Now, am I drafting Dalton Schultz on my fantasy team? No. But if I would have had a limited time machine last year where I could go forward in time, and you would have told me that CJ Stroud heading into year 2 is going to lose Stephon Diggs for the season, lose Nico Collins for over a month. Tank Dell's going to be extremely unproductive, and then they're going to lose him for the season. And Joe Mixon is going to have a career low in receptions, or damn near that, with Bobby Slowick, and Bobby Slowick's going to neglect that aspect. I would have assumed that Dalton Schultz had damn near 85 catches. That's what's more mind-boggling about Dalton Schultz last year is, and this could be an offensive coordinator thing. I'm just talking about the actual production. You lose 2 receivers for the season. You lose your best receiver for a month plus. You don't use the running back out of the backfield, and the guy's production just completely drops off. That's another thing that probably needs to be explained a little bit. So it leads to this question when it comes to Dalton Schultz. What can we expect from Dalton Schultz in 2025? Can we expect Dalton Schultz to go back and do what he did 2 years ago? I mean, is it crazy to think that Dalton Schultz could have 59 catches and 635 yards? Quite frankly, I wouldn't bet on it. I think we're going to be in the 50-45 range. But I think the way that this offense is going to use intermediate passing options, I think it's going to be in the slot, and I think they're going to use the backs a little bit more. That's kind of what they did in New England, where Caley was there, although he wasn't calling the shots. That's what they did in the Rams, and that's how the Texans really functioned as an organization when it comes to offensive decisions and personnel in the offseason. They brought in Christian Kirk. They brought in Jalen Knoll. And I think Captain Kirk
has arrived. I repeat, Captain Kirk has arrived.
And I think that Jalen Knoll are going to be a big part of what they do. And there's going to be a lot of work done in the slot. It's what they did in New England. New England went from running one of the best 2 tight ends groups of all time to multiple slots, back to 2 tight ends with Gronk and Marty B, and then back to the slots with Danny Amendola and Julian Edelman. So I think right now it's the slot. The investment in the tight end with the contract you gave Dalton Schultz, you're just kind of stuck there. So what to expect? I think the realistic expectation for Dalton Schultz right now is we can expect him to be used better. He's not going to be asked to do what he was doing. I would bet that Nick Caley was disgusted when he put on the tape and saw what Dalton Schultz was being asked to do last year. I would say he was probably disgusted by that.
Damn it, Bobby.
And then I think we'll get a better version this year than last. And it's a contract year for him. So he's performed pretty well in contract years. 2 years ago, the other thing, that was a contract year. That was a 1-year deal. So Maybe that's another element of the Dalton Schultz thing, kind of the human element where some guys perform better when it's time to put up or shut up, and it's a contract year. And maybe that's what we get from Dalton Schultz. But it goes back to the previous questions. Is he washed? Was he hurt? How are they going to use him? And maybe there's some extra motivation when it comes to being in a contract year. But there was a lot of frustration, rightfully so, with Dalton Schultz last year. There's no excuse with everything that went down. Maybe there is an excuse. It's one of the two previously mentioned things, but there should be no excuse if something's not wrong with him for Dalton Schultz to have not had a more productive season last year. Makes no sense. So we'll see what happens with the Texans. We'll see what they end up doing with the tight end position. I think we broke it down on SNL, the tight end position. It's pretty blah. Same thing as last year. No real changes at tight end. Brevin Jordan obviously missed time. You're getting him back. Tight end position, I think it's going to be a big point of emphasis with the extra picks and the opportunities in free agency next year. But this year, they just went in other directions, and that's just kind of the way that stuff lined up for him. So we'll see what happens with Dalton Schultz. It's going to be fun. Not as fun as what we're going to be watching at wide receiver and as intriguing as the offensive line. It kind of feels like a big depth chart area of blah. But we'll see what happens with Dalton Schultz. Appreciate everyone for coming through. Hope everyone has a good weekend. I think I'm about to go eat some oysters. Enjoy the Saturday. Got Pops watching the daughter downstairs. So we will talk a little bit later. And be sure to subscribe. Be sure to like. Be sure to ride along. And also, if you're in business and you need safety supplies, be sure to check out BobTech. You could call them right now. It's Saturday. It's the weekend. All these big ones who get it done places, they're going to have an AI bot talking to you, and they're going to have jacked up prices, and they don't give a damn about your local Houston business because they have no sweat in the game. We see how these corporations are. They blame their prices on their price hikes. Anytime they get an opportunity to blame a price hike, they do it. They don't do it at BobTech because they care about this community and they care about what's going on. You can text that number 409-744-8225. You can give them a call. Locally owned and operated. Bobby's been in the business for 45 years. Safety supplies, PPE control supplies, trucking, maritime supply, all things safety, anything you need, whether it's individually or for your business. Shout out to all the truck drivers out there. If you don't see something, just hit them up and they'll be able to find it. They'll give you the best price. They talk to you. It's locally owned and operated. PPE, oil, hazmat, spill control, anything. They got you 24/7, and they'll bring it to your job site for free locally, and they will deliver all over the place. So give them a look, check it out, and be sure to enjoy your weekend. Not ignoring the super from Jacob. Jacob is in the building. My guy, Jacob.
You ain't never hate.
Swarm
Says he doesn't understand the unpopularity of Schultz. Had a bad year last year, but a good year the first. I'm on the Team Schultz, but let's cut Fairbairn. Okay. See, he's on one of them. So I kind of touched on it, and I touch on it a lot. The problem with Dalton Schultz that I think frustrates a lot of people is his body language sucks. He knows that. Like, his body language sucks, and it's never good though. Like, it's not like he's a bottom feeding moper. Like, even the big plays he makes, there's sometimes a certain level of awkwardness. So I think the body language kind of hurts Dalton Schultz. I also think that there's not as much sweat equity or defense with Dalton Schultz. Like, there's not really like any attachment to him. Like, look, I'll just be honest. Tank Dell sucked last year too. Like, outside of that Chiefs game, go look at Tank Dell's game log, and if you watched it, he was a non-factor. I know he was coming off the injury, but he was terrible too. But I don't think anyone else was really bringing it up very often. And you know why? Because Tank Dell went to U of H, because Tank Dell's kind of looked at as someone who's going to be here for a while. He's tight with CJ and all that type of stuff. But if fair is fair, like on the surface, up to that Kansas City game, Tank Dell was as bad, and he had some drops too. Tank Dell was as bad as Dalton Schultz last year, but there wasn't as much frustration. So I think there's that kind of element to it. Schultz is also kind of an a-hole. I like it. I think it's cool. I like the a-hole nature of Schultz. He's very matter of fact, bro. What's up, bro? Yeah, there's not like a strong likability, but I just don't think fans are attached to him. I think the body language is rough. I don't know about cutting Fairbairn. Yet, but that was frustrating too. So, do I think Dalton is swarm? The Rhino, did you really have to do that?
You ain't never hate.
Swarm.
Not really. I don't think he's swarm, but I don't know that he plays a position where he has to be swarm. I would say not really. But they love him, man. They absolutely love him. Big time. But I am excited to see how this whole thing goes. I like Dalton Schultz. If you can get something close to what you got 2 years ago and they're using the backside of the backfield and the slot guys, then I think you got something cooking. There's probably going to be some opportunities for Schultz too. And we'll see how it goes. But the good news is we are now 11. Can't even say that without getting excited. 11 days away from training camp. Stutz and I just booked the crib in West Virginia, and we got fire pit, just nice little setup in West Virginia. That's gonna be the most fun time. You guys know how me and Stutz cover practices. Nobody does it better. We got you covered. And in 11 days, man, we're getting through it. Goodness gracious, 11 days. Camp will be here. My goodness. I'm so excited. Appreciate everyone for rolling through. Subscribe, like, ride along. Always remember, shout out to Bob Tech. When it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together. Can Dalton Schultz bounce back? The face of the franchise, DeMeco Ryans. Have a good weekend, folks.
On YouTube, we got taste for days. Opinions to give, we got takeaways. If it's up, then it's up. We number one. You don't need to try your luck. Locker room, yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk, yeah, you know what we about to do.